met Gerrard through a dear friend, and speaking with him was a truly appreciable experience. His journey hasn't been an easy one. From India to Melbourne, he's had his challenges, and they've been consistent. I do believe that listening to someone share their challenges and speak of the light at the end of the tunnel is something each of us needs at some point in our life. So, here is another motivational katha. If you know someone who can use this assurance, do share this listen.
So, in regards to your journey and your life in Australia, even setting up your business, what made you go there? Like, take this whole shift from India to Australia. You had your family as well. And what inspired you to, or motivated you to keep doing it, because of all the challenges, especially with immigration, and in back in the day?
Now, going back to to the mid 90s, basically my family was the last to leave India actually. In fact, I was the one to head that because most of my dad's side has been in Australia for the last 45, 50 years. They left in the late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
I know they always wanted us to come to Australia, which my mom was pretty um, staunch on saying no. We'll stay back in India. We will do what we have to do, and then we'll see what happens. And we were actually given our okay as a family to to reach Australia in the 70s and the 80s, because at that point of time immigration was totally different, where you were interviewed in a hotel with one of the embassy staff, and if they look through your documents, they will assess it on the spot. We were given 3 months to leave, and I still remember my mom. Yeah, and I still remember my mom telling my dad, "No, my kids will leave this country with a master's degree behind them," and that's the so that was what it is. And we in fact um dad's side was always pushing for us to come, but
Mm-hmm.
um we could never make that decision. We were a very close knit family back home. We lived in a joint family. Yeah. My mom
Okay.
was my mom was a principal at the British International School in Madras,
Uh-huh.
and dad, of course, was GM of Facet, which, if you remember, in the old days, the typewriters, the Godrej typewriters, and the Facet typewriters, and
Oh, okay.
yeah. So dad was GM there because dad was also involved in the transfer of technology for this, Ericsson's in India. They
Mm-hmm.
came with the push button telephones when we were all young at that point of time. Yep.
The flip
So
ones, or the tinier ones, just with the
no,
rubber
no,
buttons?
the square ones with the buttons,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he put up a few factory. He put up a factory actually in Osur, to for the internal parts, and then I set up another plastic injection molding in Madras.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, and then of course the vacuum cleaners came, which is the Ericsson's vacuum cleaners, and it was marketed by Forbes. So
So
it all
technology
started.
progressed with you.
And yeah, and when I had finished my MBA, uh, I actually started as a management trainee with Tatas in Bombay,
Okay.
and then moved from there. I then worked with uh, BASF, which was doing in the chemicals in the leather industry.
Mm-hmm.
So we had 63% of the market at that point of time. Um, so it was a massive market. And then I somehow got into real estate in Bangalore.
Oh, you
We were
did?
selling,
Okay.
yeah. So I actually stayed in Bangalore.
Mm-hmm.
We were marketing real estate projects in the Gulf region at that point of time,
Okay.
and that's how Bangalore became what it is today. In fact, it's a concrete jungle now, but Bangalore was very, very green, and everyone loved Bangalore at one point
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah.
Um, so we sold out a lot of projects. We used to literally live off a suitcase, and we used to go for a month or two just selling real estate, lifestyle real estate in Bangalore.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then at that point of time, I actually got an okay to come to Australia, and I was still not. I was still not. I had actually 4 days on my visa to leave India.
4 days.
Um, yeah, and yes, I actually left and came to Australia. It was totally different because um, it was hard yakka after that. uh, Australia was totally different at that point of time because when you come out to a new country, you don't have Australian experience,
Right.
or you're overqualified, and so my family being in Australia in the 70s and 80s, or even the
Mm-hmm.
late 60s, had I don't think they were aware of what was changing in the background in the different industries because to be frank with you, when we came with we were technically we were asked some real hard questions of where did we come from, what was our
Oh,
how was our how did we learn our English and stuff. But
okay.
anyway, that was totally different. Now the world has changed,
Yeah.
and Australia has changed for the better. And you can see Australia and India now have become very, very close with each other.
Yes.
And
I mean, I understand that to an extent. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, so when I first came, tried to get a job. I used to go door to door, not asking for a job. Now I actually was a GM when I came here. So when I left India, and it was difficult. So my wife came a little bit later. I
Mhm.
came in '96 Feb, and my wife came in May that year, and
Okay.
she actually got a job before me.
Oh.
Um, yeah, so it was a big challenge, and then I actually landed up working on the production line in Ford,
Okay.
and yeah, and there were opportunities within the company.
Mhm.
But usually in Australia, they would like to give people who have worked with the company, 5, 10 years to start going up the company line. And then there was an assistant manager's position advertised, and I actually applied for that.
Mhm.
I was on hardly 6 months in the company, and I did get uh, chosen for that particular position. And then of course there was in the labor sector, you got the
Mhm.
unions to deal with, and how can a person come 6 months and then just keep going. So that
Wow.
was a turning point in my life. I still remember I used to work 3 shifts a day just to, you know I used to start at 4 in the morning, work overtime till about 7,
Mhm.
and then do the general shift from 7:15 to 4, and then again another shift from 4:15 to 6
Oh my
6 o'clock,
God.
and then run and try and pick up my wife, who had to walk 2 kilometers, pick up my son at a daycare center because it was cold at that point of time, and we had
Mhm.
come from India. And yes, it was a challenge, but I think that at that point of time, I decided, because I really liked real estate then. And then what happened was, we went down to the real estate company in the area,
Mhm.
and one of these guys said, I'll give you the home. It was a
Okay.
unit,
Mhm.
start off here, and I do understand you come from overseas, and yeah, and I'll tell you the irony about that. Today he works for me.
Ah.
He was, yeah, and he actually gave us a home, and we started our life there. And I went down to the same real estate company and said, "Listen, I would like to do real estate." And they said,
Mhm.
uh, "What do you mean you want to do real estate? You may not be able to." And of course, it was a bit sarcastic, and people didn't know
Yeah.
you at that point of time, and then I realized that there was a small license to get done to start off with,
Mhm.
and also realized that there was a license after that, which you could own your own business.
Mhm.
So um, I went back to the same real estate company, and I said, "Listen, I'm going to do my license. If you guys need someone, you can get in touch with me. So
Right.
that was basically where I think we were going on into 1997, because I started work on the 5th of August 1996, and this was closer to the August of 97, and then what happened was I got a call, and they said, come and we need to speak to you. At that point of time, it was actually one of the directors who were resigning from the company, and actually there was a split in the partnership or
Mm-hmm.
whatever that was. And they said, join the company. And the same gentleman who gave us the our first home was working in the same company, and I had a chat with him and said, okay, let's see what we can do. And they actually put me in an office which was a failure. That office was not performing because it didn't have the right team, and and yes, we put a team together, and it started to do well.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a conversation which I had with the uh, with the owner of the company, and I said, listen, you give us a chance, this office will overtake your corporate office. And he said, it'll never happen. Um but 3 years down the track, it did happen. We overtook. So that was the. But all along the way is what I built was I built a lot of friends, and most importantly, not not friends only from India. I built friends in different nationalities,
Mm-hmm.
under different communities. The Lebanese, the Greeks, the
Right.
Italians, or the Australians, and that's something which actually benefits a person when they're in a multicultural country like Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people, or what I see some of these days, that they tend to stick only to their community, which sort
Yes.
of reduces their scope of growth. And
Absolutely.
yes, so then what I actually left them and then moved on to the city, and I actually was I actually managed their rent roll for one of the biggest companies in Australia, in Melbourne.
Wow.
So from there on, it was a growth. I had people were calling me to sort of work with them,
Mm-hmm.
and along the way, I did make some mistakes. Try to help some of the people who actually asked me to work with them, not knowing that they had uh, other ideas. And sometimes business ethics can be sort of um, pushed beyond boundaries, and that's something which I've really learned in Australia,
Mm-hmm.
because it could change. And so then on, and then it eventually started, and we started a business in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started a business in 2002, and that grew to three offices. Actually, that grew to three offices, and I had 25 staff.
Wow.
But there was a lot of competition, and at that point of time, we went through some challenges in our own personal lives, because my wife had developed cancer, also went through all
Oh my
that.
God.
Yeah. And um, and then what happened, the GFC came in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
and one of our big developers did not tell us exactly um, that he was not going to complete the project on time,
Mm-hmm.
only because he had lost a lot of money on the market,
Okay.
and the project started being delayed, and that caused a lot of uh, issues, because we actually factored in the commissions and paid people in advance.
Mm-hmm.
This caused the factoring company to say, okay, if you can't get these type of funds back to us now, it'll triple. So the interest triples automatically. So then,
Okay.
of course, at that point of time, that was one big mistake in my business career, where I actually listened to these administrators who technically lied. I said, and today, even if it's a friend or a person I know is in problems with his business, there's ways and means around it which you don't need to technically involve these administrators.
Mm-hmm.
And because they are there, they get in, they destroy the company, they just sell out what can be done, and then
Yeah.
and but they told me, yeah, the company is good. We paid everything to the last day, and then within 24 hours, I had actually all the company was seized. My I lost 6 houses. I
Oh my
was down
gosh.
to nothing.
I mean,
Uh,
it's just like the hits keep on coming. It never stops.
yeah, yeah, and that was one of the biggest disappointments I had, where people uh,
Mm.
had no idea of how to deal with these guys, because these guys said they were going to help assist the company, but they did actually technically sold the company for little or nothing, and 25% of the costs, which my wife and myself could have sort of stopped, sold one of the offices, just
Yeah.
got things done. And coming from India, then you have no idea of what you want to do the right thing as a businessman, and see things. But that that taught me quite a bit. Family disappeared, friends disappeared. Yeah, because you've gone from being one of the biggest in the northwest of Melbourne to zero in a few hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I told her when this happened, I said, "Listen, you guys will not be able to run this operation." And they said, "Yeah, you think we can't run it?" I said, "Yeah, carry on, run it." And then within a month, they came back and said, you we'll pay you a small amount. Come back and run it. And the only reason I went back to run it was basically there was a name to be,
Hmm.
and I wanted everything to be handed over properly. So which we went into administration in Feb 2008. I actually handed over the company in September 2008 totally, but having nothing. So you've gone through all this, your friends and family when people
Absolutely.
go through that. Um, then I still remember September 19, 2008. I handed over the last office, and I said, okay, time to go back to the workforce. So I started looking around for a job, and
Hmm.
and I said, and I told myself, I'm not going back into business at all. I said, let's have a different life. But yeah, so I was called to a job, and they said, okay, we have a lot of properties. We want someone to grow it, to make it a larger company, and all sorts of stuff.
Hmm.
So by the 6th of October, I was in their office, and I started to work with them. And whatever they had told me at the uh, interview was absolutely totally different from what when I'd landed there, because they had no properties, and they said, no, we'll have to start from scratch.
Wow.
Then they tell you, okay, we discussed your salary with you. You'll have to cut it by 60%. We can only pay you 40% of the salary.
Oh
Now,
gosh.
yeah. So a person who's lost everything and had nothing, I told my wife, I said, this is, so my wife said, no, you do what you ought to do, see
Yeah.
what has to be done. And she's been my rock all through this. And I said, okay, I'll take charge of it. And within 3 months, I actually took charge of the entire operations, and we built quite a big company um, in the next 15, 18 months. And and it actually had a ripple effect, because that's I could say 13 years down the track, that same company today,
Hmm.
because we started it, and then they were actually looking for funds injection, which means the asset which I had built had to be sold. So you're technically pushing yourself your own employment,
Hmm.
and So then I said, okay, let's sell it, and because they needed 500,000 to start their operations, especially because it was a specialized investment selling company.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, in a real estate company in Melbourne or in Australia, the asset of the company is the number of properties they manage. So it's called a rent roll. So the number of properties is whether it's 200 or 300. So I had actually in 18 months built them 350 properties, and
Amazing.
and yeah, and then what happened was they couldn't sell it for about 2 or 3 months, and then I said, listen, just get some support for me, admin support for me in the office. I'll
Mm-hmm.
go out and try and sell the company. Unfortunately, I did find a buyer within a week or two,
Mm-hmm.
and we sold the company for 500,000 at that point of time, and technically they got their funds to start the investment selling division.
Okay. Okay.
And then I said, okay, I've done everything. I've actually handed over the entire asset to another company,
Mm-hmm.
and I technically left that company and drove home. But and I said, okay, now it looks at me, I have to start all over again because I was only building other people's companies,
Right. Right.
and but then I also told myself I was not going to get back in business because of the past. But sometimes when God has something for you, you can never run. You can never run.
Yeah.
So in a week or two, I actually took a break for a week or two because I was really uh, tired and mentally tired at that point of time.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in 2011,
Okay.
and then I responded to an ad in the papers.
Mm-hmm.
And I went for this interview. It said, you needed a person to build a company. And I said, okay, I'll try and build a company for you. And when I had finished that interview, I actually came out as a 50% partner.
Wonderful.
And then of course, you'll never believe that business I literally started in my garage. Because but and then we started growing that business, and I think at that point of time, and then again it was a it was a partnership, right,
Mm-hmm.
which eventually, um I think it ran for a year and a half, 2 years, and then my son was just coming out of uni, and he was 17 years at that point of time, and he came and told me. He said, when people go to when people start university, they need some extra money. So he said, okay, I'll come and do your inspections. And so uh, I said, okay, because the company was in Melbourne CBD, and the
Right.
uni which he was going to RMIT, then it was just down the road from there. And he is actually an accountant. He started to finish his accountancy, and
Okay.
he said, I'll come and help you. So it carried on, and he used to come at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and do inspections because our model was different. Like if you see, if you look in Canada, some of the real estate companies, they control a particular suburb or a few suburbs
Mm-hmm.
together. But what our operations are doing, it's actually almost the length and breadth of Melbourne, with the exception of
Okay.
the eastern side of Melbourne,
Mm-hmm.
and this was the start of stuff, and we were covering. People were wondering how, because and I explained to you the investment side. When investors buy properties in Melbourne, they don't only just buy in one suburb; they buy in a few different suburbs, and
Mm-hmm.
it could be in the southeast, or it could be in the northwest, could be in the north, and Melbourne, the way Melbourne's designed, the road structure and all, it's pretty easy to if you know how to use that location, you can actually extend long at least 200 kilometers on each side. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so we started growing the company. My son also contributed to we used to technically do something like 45, 50 opens on one day, in a day, on a weekend, on a Saturday. We'll start, and we used to drive 200-300 kilometers a day sometimes just to build the company. And as time went on with the business partner was supposed to bring in a number of properties. It was
Mm-hmm.
agreed that once the company reaches 500 properties, we'll decide whether we buy out each other or what the story was.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't happen. He started asking for a lot of money. So when was this? This was in 2018. Yeah, about 18, 17, 18.
Okay.
My son actually borrowed my business partner for $1 million, which was basically not. I mean, he could not even claim, uh, and we offered him $500,000 for doing nothing. And still and this is what I mean, to businessmen, you've got to be very, very careful
Mm-hmm.
with people. They are this excellent people at the start. They see the growth coming through. They promise that they'll bring the growth, and then one person becomes in the slave performer,
Yeah.
and everyone sits back and this takes profit. So for almost 5 years he was doing that. Or 4 or 5 years he was just wanting his profits, and that's about it. And then my son said, listen, we need to ask him to hand over the company to us,
Yeah.
or we start another company. And he started, whatever we would, and as gentlemen, we discussed stuff and we agreed on stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and of course there was never an agreement in place to say, um, okay, this was going to happen. But even the accountants knew what was the agreement between both of us. So even the accountants failed us where there could have been a shareholder agreement in place. And that's the reason
Mm-hmm.
why I talk to a lot of people who go into business partnerships, that there needs to be an agreement in place. Only because human beings
Yeah.
can change. Yeah.
Oh,
And
definitely.
yeah, and I've seen a lot of friends also getting destroyed just because of, I would say it's human greed, or it's the love of money. And there's no uh, I would say ethics as far as that is concerned.
Yeah.
And but it was a big challenge, and we literally got him out.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way we got him out was, we told ourselves, he wasn't coming to the table. We said, okay, so we started another company, and my son resigned from the company. So the day my son resigned from the company, he realized we're going to eat him up. So he came to the table and asked for the highest price possible.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point of time, we had put in too much of effort into the company, and we
Mm-hmm.
said, just pay him out, and we'll see how best we go through for the next few years.
Mm-hmm.
But I must say, God was on our side, and I think I always say God gave us this business, and he brought us from a garage. And from the day he moved out, we have grown so fast, because basically, a lot of people wonder how my son and myself are so close with each other, and still so different. uh, when we sit on a table, we know exactly what's happening, and
Yeah.
and 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 that's in fact, I have handed over the company to him, and there's no use of handing over the company when you're old. So he's taken the reins. So he's the director of the group now, and so he said, what are you retiring? I said, no, I am not retiring. I said, I will work till the day I die, but I will I don't need to hold the reins at the moment. You can hold the reins.
Yeah.
You've earned it. You've stood by the company for more than in excess of 13 years, and time for you to. He's 27 at the moment, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with you. So, and yeah, God has been very good to us, and we have got a brand. We compete with the biggest of franchises in Melbourne. We extend from the southeast to the northwest, and into the regional of Ballarat and Bendigo.
Mm-hmm.
And people wonder, if you check my website, you'll see
Yeah.
at any given point of time, as far as managements are concerned, because there's about 90 properties there at all times, and we open these properties almost twice or thrice a week. 90 properties are open.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of investment companies come to us and say, listen, because clients buy in Melbourne and they buy outside Melbourne also. So,
Okay.
the advantage is they're talking to the same company. Yes, it'll be a different property manager, but most of our property managers have stayed with us for a long time. One, because some of them have worked with me 15 years ago. Some of them
Okay.
I have trained when they were 20 years of age, and today uh, and uh, and that was the reason why I was saying young people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Most of the young people I trained are all with me today, and yes, even my old bosses uh, with me at the moment. And I've even got back my first office, which when I first came to Australia in '97.
Oh, wow.
So he called and told me, "Listen, we are downsizing.
Mm-hmm.
We are moving into one office. Would you like? I know you've got quite a bit of properties in the area. Would you want an office?" I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Definitely, I'll take my old office." I said, "So I've got that office also." So yes, it's been challenges, but it's also been a very big learning curve, um,
Right.
and it's also a learning curve both in business and I would say uh, human behavior, and but yeah, all good. And today we are on track. Possibly to even touch the 2,500 properties under management, and we're looking for additional offices. We're just trying. Most of the team is young, and the age group ranges between 19 and 35. I'm the older one there, and yeah, but all of them. I mean, I've got a good team,
Yeah.
and yeah. So that's been our road, and it's been hard, but at the same time, it's been very, very satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
When you're up against the big wigs in business, and they realize, oh, you are there also. So
Yeah.
and we're trying to build a brand, and
Mm-hmm.
um, to make this comment, we have been in Australia for 25 years, but we originated from India, and our company is the only Indian company in Melbourne to have four offices which are fully owned by us, not a franchise.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and that gives me a lot of satisfaction, because I know what my parents did for us and the
Oh,
sacrifices they made.
definitely. I can
Yeah,
imagine.
uh, the sacrifices they made, because there needs to be something uh, out of
Out
what.
of all that,
Actually,
yeah.
yeah. But and that's what I'm. It's not only me. It's the heavenly factor also, which plays a vital role, and I think there's always a third person watching over all what's happening, and you do the right thing, you'll get where you have to get. So
So, on our last call, we did discuss briefly that you've been involved a lot with the younger crowd
yeah,
and also with, um, I don't know if this is the right word, but the church.
yeah.
So, what is that about, and what makes you what made you want to connect with the younger generation?
Okay. I have got a lot of moving through in life in Melbourne. There's a lot of challenges for the younger people.
Mm-hmm.
Much bigger challenges than when we were young. We
Okay.
we we live carefree lives today. Today, there's a lot of challenges for the youngsters. You'll find a lot of them depressed. A lot of them, you know, uh, apart from being depressed, have no one to speak to, have no one to confide in, no one to, because to be frank with you, I mean, India also will have this, but here a lot of them come, some of the parents are actually breaking up their marriages,
Mm.
and I've got a lot of, I've got a few classmates who have been with me from grade one, and in from India, and
Mm-hmm.
and some of them have, separated, and sometimes a single child has two sets of parents or four sets of parents. So you know what I mean.
Oh
It's
gosh.
the mother has a partner, the father has a partner, and those part, it just goes on,
Right, right.
and Australia throws a lot of challenges to the young,
Oh,
and so what used to be, uh, they were friends to my son, and of course, we used to ask them to come home, and my dad taught me something back home.
mm-hmm.
He always said, you guys want to have a good time, come home, sit in the house. You want to have a drink, I'll give you a drink, but don't go out on the road and sort of misbehave, you guys
Yeah.
yourselves and all that. So I actually brought that right through
Mm-hmm.
with all the youngsters and whoever I could help, and a lot of them, today are shining because they had their challenges,
Mm-hmm.
mentally and personally, and so they used to come home. They come and have a meal with us, have a drink with us, and we were a small family because I've only got one son,
Mm-hmm.
and my father stays with me. After my mother died in '97, my
Okay.
father came over here, and to the very fact that we even ride motorcycles along with them. So my wife and myself, yeah, it's only to keep them safe
Yeah.
and be a support to them, because
Mm.
a lot of the youngsters have a lot of talent. Sometimes you just need to bring those talents out, and
Absolutely.
and they will excel. So that's yeah. Coming to the part of the church, well, yes, I've been involved in church, a few churches here in Melbourne. I was involved in building a church. I had a lot of issues when I was building the church. You know, Members of the community did not want a church to be built, thinking that the church was supporting, the youngsters who were on drugs or had mental issues. They were not realizing that the church was a community-based service where
Mm-hmm.
people hurting could always come and do stuff. And actually, there was a case where I had to literally deal with 250 objections, and I've seen that through. It took me a period of 4 or 5 years, but it was challenging. And now there are three churches running. So,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, I support. Our company supports one in Sri Lanka also.
Okay.
Um, and there's a lot of um, classmates of mine who are also in the ministry. So yes, I have gone down to the refugee camps in Rameshwaram and in Rameshwaram, and I've gone to even I've traveled to Sri Lanka just to see how best you know help could be given from here
Mm-hmm.
through the churches. People can fund something for the kids so that there was a feeding program run properly. Food is given to kids once a day. But those are the things we were involved with. Yeah.
How do youngsters connect with um contributing to community or society, in a sense that when you talk about how you've been involved with refugee camps and people who are far worse, who are in far worse conditions. So, youngsters these days, there is a definite shift from, say, 10 years ago of how they think and how they deal with life. And because of the way, um, for a lack of a better word, the superficiality of how everything works right now, there is so much of stress, and they're very insecure to even identify with their true self. So with all of this, how does one get through to them and
It's difficult. It's
bring them
very
to?
difficult.
It is very difficult.
Yeah.
So how do you manage to do that?
The only way is to gain their respect, number one, because basically some people do not even want to spend the time to talk to them.
Mm,
So even with the youngsters working with me, I walk into the office, and say, "How are you going today?" Yeah, I'm fine. I said, "I don't think you're fine today." But I'll come back and I'll speak to you. Then they come back and, "How do you know that I'm not fine?" I said, "Listen, body language tells me, the smile tells me,
yeah.
everything tells. I mean, and yes, the world has changed so much to this artificial stuff where
Mm,
on social media people want to portray that they everything is good,
yeah.
but there's a big wall
Yeah.
where there's that much of sadness, um, on different aspects of their life, and I still feel that once you have the time to at least sit down and you're able to identify what is the
Mm,
problem. um, I can give you a I can give you an example. There was a lady who joined us. She had a master's in communications and journalism,
mm-hmm.
and um, when she came for an interview, it was actually for a receptionist's role,
Okay.
and she was just not talking at the interview. I was trying to talk to her. She was giving me short answers, but
Okay.
something told me, just give this person
A chance.
a chance,
Yeah.
because anyone else had sat at that interview and said, okay, this person does not want to even
Mm.
talk properly, or it was just uh, today she's my sales manager, marketing and communications. Yeah. Uh, and and she always says, when I first joined the company, I technically did not hated you and your son. I said, yeah, no, because you're totally different, because basically you're always performance based and this. And I said, yes, but we're also human beings to support one another. And that she said it took me some time to realize that I could come
Realize
and sit
that.
down
Yeah.
and come and sit down with guys. I'm the type of person during the 9:30 to 5:30. I always tell them, listen, leave those problems out of
Mm.
the door. Because today the demands from clients of any business, they are not worried about your problems. They are worried about
No.
their own problems. They want their stuff done first. So
Mm-hmm.
if we could s- um, service those wants of what they want,
Mm.
I said after 5:30 we are full family ourselves.
Right.
We can sit down. There's no time. Even if you have to go the whole night through, sit down
Mm-hmm.
to sort a problem personally, what the story is. We'll go the whole night through. We'll order some. We'll order some dinner. Yeah, you can have a wine, no problem. But let's sit down and talk, and let's clear this issue.
Mm.
Because and that's how we've been dealing with stuff. And to be frank with you, most of my offices, they do groceries once every 2 weeks. So
Okay.
it's their second home. So there's no of them bringing their lunch or bringing this. If they want some snacks, they got it there. They want some noodles, they have the noodles there. They want biscuits, go and have it. And people ask us, oh, why do you do this? I said, no. I mean, if we all are not a family together, I
Yeah.
mean, uh, um, I mean, we're not just employer and employee. I mean,
And you're spending
we need
that
to
much
stand.
of time each day with that
Yeah,
group of people. You may as
yeah,
well connect on a.
connect. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's the way. And yes, and this is a whole scenario which the young people face.
Mm.
Um, it can be challenging. I've seen some challenges of young people. It is daunting at times. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So if we can't help, as not that we have not had our challenges and real stuff. If we're only going to be worried about ourselves, then the world is never going to change. Yes, the world is changing for the worse these days, but
Yeah.
they're just worried about themselves, and it doesn't have. It the concern factor and the caring factor is
Mm.
slowly um, diminishing.
Yes.
But as long
Yes.
as we live, wherever we can reach, we can do
Hmm.
something, and the rest we can't control. You can never. Uh,
So currently, just to give them a little more information about immigration to Australia and what that the challenges that can entail. Um, what do you think that? How do you think that youngsters or anybody wanting to move to Australia? I've heard it's quite challenging. Australia, New Zealand right now, it's been difficult for a few years, in fact, to get PRs and citizenship. So, what do you suggest? If not Australia, then where else would be best?
to be frank with you, I have helped a lot of, and want to answer that question very directly. I am actually disappointed with the immigration policy of Australia, current immigration policy of Australia.
Mhm.
The reason being, it was a lot different earlier. Um, it was much easier. I mean, people were assessed on what. We Indians, for example, when we came, if you've got a master's degree, you are assessed on a master's degree
Right.
um, or equivalent standards. But what has happened is it's this whole thing has changed, where now there's supposed to be an invitation of whether you can stay back. And that is another massive challenge for all our youngsters coming from India.
Hmm.
And I think countries like Canada now are saying, okay, Australia's turning their backs on you,
Yeah.
we'll take you. So a lot of people
Mm.
are turning towards Canada. New Zealand is much easier to come through now because
Okay.
I think when they get their PR in New Zealand, they are allowed to cross the border. They call it cross the ditch, but it's to cross the border. Uh, uh, and Melbourne is I forget about Melbourne. Australia itself is wanting people uh, to settle down in regional areas, and that's the reason why today a lot of real estate has been allowed. I mean, the real estate developments are allowed in regional areas like Ballarat and Bendigo, which is the older towns before,
Okay.
uh, uh, because they want to improve the infrastructure there. Because Australia, if you look at Australia, it's Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, and then of course Darwin to a certain extent, and Queensland.
Hmm.
The rest of the other stuff, it's a bit of farming, and there's not much jobs in the regional areas. So I think we need to get our act together, because if we're wanting people to live in regional areas, then the infrastructures have to be developed. There's no use of us, saying bring the people in
Yeah.
and not providing for it, because it is just a scenario where engineers and doctors and nurses sometimes can't even get a job, and they're
Mhm.
driving Ubers. Of course, when we came, I spoke to one of the gentlemen who is an engineer. I said, one thing, at least today you can get an Uber, you can drive an Uber. When we came, we had nothing.
Right.
The Uber was never there. At least if it was there, at least we could have started earning some money. I was joking.
Something.
But it is a situation. Actually, one of my classmates, actually in Loyola, he runs a successful called Delinga Consultants, which is basically all over India. I think
Okay.
there's one in Bangalore, one in Coimbatore, Madras. But it's a sad case of affairs where, let's face facts, you're not allowing students to come back in, number one,
Mm.
because now, of course, now, um, but the students could have been allowed to come back in. Now, most of them are going to defer their courses
Mm.
until next year. And let me be very, very clear. Australia, is mineral rich. It's customer service, and then it's real estate. Other than that, yes, you got the IT side, which is there, and which a lot of people used to come from India to
Mm-hmm.
do the ID. Because the reason being, my company used to give uh, banks like National and ANZ lot of properties only because they had a lot of employees coming from Hyderabad, Madras, Bombay,
Okay.
Delhi, just to do IT projects, and they
Mm.
were all well funded. All that is dried. All that is dried up, and I only hope the economy can keep moving because what people say and what's happening, what we see it. We as real estate people see it every day. What's
Mhm.
happening? People can't get jobs. People can't afford to stay. Um,
Yeah, and I mean, this one thing I do understand it, but I still fail to understand it because education that we get from India, even masters and double degrees and all of that, when you step out of that land, it is assessed in a totally different way that it's not even equivalent to what it is in India. It's a lot lower. Like even in Canada right now, I was just having to go through my PR process and any my I mean, I haven't done a master's degree, but I was just looking through, I was researching. You literally have to do maybe two masters and you're still not equivalent to the masters that you achieve here in Canada. So is it the same thing? I mean, it could be the same thing
well,
there.
I'm one of those problems because when I came here first,
Yeah.
they assessed my MBA
Mm.
as a bachelor's degree, and I told them, I said, do you know where I've done this stuff? And in fact, I can actually show you a letter 6 months
Mhm.
later, and I'm talking way back in 97, 98, and they write to me and said, sorry, we made a mistake.
Mm.
You're on level of an Australian masters, but it's too late. People, it's come 2 years too late. You're
Yeah.
running around for a job. You're running to settle down, and you've got a point. I think there needs to be a lot more um, uh, knowledge
Mm.
from the educational side of it to know what India does. Um, but at the same time, there is a little difference. Here, they want you to be. In India is sometimes, intensive book knowledge and projects and all that. Here, they want you to be hands-on,
Right.
and that's where there's a balance which needs to be struck between both countries. And as far as the level of study goes, yes, they need to come to a sort of a balance there because
Mm.
I've also have people I employ from India who's come
Mm.
here and doing their MBA, and I tell those people, I said, you left India and you've come here, and what we people, once you leave India and come here, you sort of, the conference levels drop. And I asked them, why should your confidence level drop?
Yeah.
No, I said, no, the way you're looking at it, it's
Mm.
it's totally different. There's opportunities here. Unless you put your foot forward and start moving towards that,
Exactly. Mm.
you're not going to overcome that conference insecurity level,
Yeah.
which you, I mean, there's no use of you being an excellent student and you're telling us this, yeah, I've had some real conversations with some of the youngsters. Some of them are working with me,
Mm.
I've said, and I've given them some deadlines. I said, one thing, in this country, you don't have a person who's going to drive you to uni. So you better get in that car and start learning to drive
Right.
and start getting independent. And if you're not going to get in that car, we will organize for a driving instructor to come here, pick you up, and teach you to drive. Because basically, Australia's, I mean, you'll find it in Canada. If you don't have a car, you just zero. It's
Yeah.
just, and people tend, and then they find that they are not able to push themselves to the next level only because they can't get to different locations.
Right.
Uh, and of course, they've got to understand that. I think this whole thing about living, don't get me wrong, I still love India. It is a fantastic country, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I like the competition there. It's there, but at the same time, um, when you're out of India, that doesn't mean to say you are one level lower than the country you've
Hmm.
come to. In fact, you've got a lot of ammunition to take that first step and keep moving from what we have been
Right.
taught back
Right.
home because of the level of education there. So,
Okay.
and yes, I agree with you. There's some balance which needs to be struck, and I've seen it
Mm.
happen very, very rarely. It's very common. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm definitely hoping that this gives the listeners and the youngsters especially an idea of, how, to the extent of challenges that they could face and the variety of challenges they could face, and still be able to go ahead. They just need to research and keep that faith. I feel that, to keep going and to just get what you want, right, and make the effort to do it. Yeah.
Faith is most important. Whatever background they come from, faith is most important. The second thing is to first know that each one of them are a light to the world.
Yes.
They have got to
Yes.
allow that light to shine for it to sort of cater to what the
Yeah.
world wants or what they want, right?
Feel right now, especially over the past few years, they really need to be able to let that light come in to themselves
Yes.
first, and then and I really hope that somehow I'm able to connect with more people in that aspect. That is ultimately the intention of the podcast, because you are a light in your own life. You cannot live a life dependent on external factors to show you the way or show you that light. It's all within you. Everything you seek outside of you is already here within you.
Yeah.
You just need to connect there and trust yourself that you can do it.
Very much, very much. Yeah, you'll be. Yeah, sometimes it's difficult that you'll be really down, but it's just. And I that's why I always tell the young people, yes, you'll have your bad day. Yes, you'll have the day which you will not be able to think.
Mm.
Take a few steps back, spend some time in prayer, then say, okay, let's go. Let's look at what are the options available. If there's no
Right.
options available, discuss it. Let's see what we can do. And that's the only way it is. And sometimes it's difficult. It is sometimes very, very difficult.
Mm.
And this whole pandemic has just made it all the more difficult for a lot of people. And
Right.
I only hope that this whole world changes and changes for the better. And
For the better.
it's-
I mean,
yeah,
ultimately, Gerard, I do believe that there is an abundance of resources in the
very much.
world. you know th- th- no matter what economy looks like, there is still an abundance. You can find it. It's just concentrated in certain spaces because people have been able to identify the best way to get those saturated in their area around themselves. But you just need to be able to not look at it as a challenge, but just understand understand what needs to be done, the steps to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about that challenge, there's one whole point here. We tend to come from a country. We tend to listen to our own people,
Mm.
not not try to not and therefore there's always absence of them trying, not having other friends, other
Yes.
other from different other nationalities,
Yes.
and that's where the closed type of thinking happens. and that's where they don't people can't think out of the box, and they say, oh, this person came from India, this is what happened, it'll happen this
Right,
way.
right.
It doesn't
Even yeah,
it's
yeah. Even coming, you travel thousands of kilometers away from one place to another, but still you want to be stuck to that community of people, and you
yeah.
believe that that is going to help you survive. Not necessarily, and that I feel that whole cocooned way of living and thinking happens even here, like even in Canada. My experience here has been um, surprising to an extent, because I came with the excitement to meet new people and interact with the culture and learn more. But the people here themselves are so they'd rather connect with, if you sound, if you speak English like them and you sound like them, they're a
Mm,
lot more comfortable connecting with you. But if your English doesn't sound Canadian, then they're hesitant, they don't want to, they have their own concept and their own lifestyle and everything. They live a very, very pampered lifestyle. Everything is easy access, and even though they don't have the maid system that we have, everything is I don't know, I can't use a better word than pampered. It's just the way that they are. The slightest difficulty in a day drains them completely. They cannot deal with it, and then they get agitated and they get frustrated. It's just a small hurdle. It happens. It's part of your day. It's gonna come. It's
mm,
gonna come, and you just
yeah,
gotta, they
yeah.
get depressed, they get stressed, they get agitated, they take pills, they do all of these things. Why do you need to do so much? But that's just the way they've literally been living. It's so commercial. Lifestyle here is so commercial, every part of your day, and they're so dependent on all these extra things that they need, that they think they need actually, but you don't actually need it. Yeah,
Mm,
it took me a while to actually, even so I had to take a step back with my effort to want to connect with the crowd here. I literally had to take a step back and realize that there are certain age groups that you can connect with because they're more comfortable with themselves and they're all right to connect with you. But the rest of the crowd, especially the youngsters, millennials, a little 18 to 30, 35, they really it's something else. It's like a Barbie lifestyle. Yeah. I don't want to sound rude, but it's literally like everything is very um it's just that way. And yeah, it took me some time to really, so I just had to let it go. And I was like, all right, if this is not going to work with my effort, I just will take it as it comes. I've built relationships as they come because they need to be comfortable to connect with me. I can go out of my way to build that trust and thing, but if they don't want to, if they think that I'm trying too hard, then again, that's not going to be a genuine relationship. It's not going to be long term. So that's too much of an investment of time and energy for me as well. So yeah, it's quite interesting. I mean, the closed concept of thinking that we have, again, is one extreme. Here it's another extreme. But yeah,
yeah. Yeah, and I
it's
think
a
I
good.
think the digital world is also making it that way. It's just that how everyone portray themselves. They all want to follow those type of
They'll
people.
connect
They
with
just
you better on
yeah,
Instagram
yeah.
and Facebook, but in person they don't know how to talk to you.
No, that's that. Uh, uh, yeah, and there are some people, some of my friends and their daughters or their sons, and I asked the question, do you really need to post these things on Facebook? I said, and and I get some vague answers, but I have to. No, we're just not doing this. We just put up. I said, you don't need to. You don't need to tell the. I mean, if you gain anything from that,
Ah,
that's fine.
yeah.
Use it as a feature where, and that's I always tell people, the digital world is there is for the business side of it. It's for bringing awareness. It's
Right.
it's for it's for contributing some. But I think that what the whole world is turned to
Hmm.
It's more about me, how much what acceptance. So it's sort of creating a mental attribute that I need to have so much of appreciation, so much of likes, and so much of it's it's
Yeah.
if you look on YouTube itself, people
Oh.
talk about talk about a message or something like that. You've got these thumbs ups and thumbs down.
Mm-mm.
The poor guy or the poor girl, lady is trying to actually give you something to learn from,
Exactly.
and you just, it's like a slap in the face. And uh,
It's more like people are able to project their frustrations through social media because they're actually very conscious and they're very nervous to communicate in person, like to have a verbal conversation, and they wouldn't share a negative comment or negative opinions very openly, except for some of them. they're
yeah.
they're hesitant to do it in person. So when you don't have to see someone face to face, it's easier for them to scream on social media and share their frustrations there, and just make someone else the reason for their frustration.
Those I call those people keyboard warriors, because basically we have that issue with Google reviews, which I'm
Mm,
not a very good fan of it, because we have a large business,
mm,
and when you pull
mm.
someone up and say that they're not right, they're the first thing they get on Google review and give you a 1 or 2 star, and oh, this person's rude and this. I had a case recently, and it a case. This lady, um, COVID struck,
Mhm.
and the government passed a law that you could approach the landlords to give you a rent reduction. This
Yeah.
lady got a rental reduction from us, from one of my property manager or one of my senior people.
Mhm.
She actually got about $13,000 in rent reduction for about eight
My God.
months right? And then she asked for a ledger, and we told her a ledger. Oh, this should have been a rent reduction. So we told her, okay, give us some time. We'll go through your ledgers. We'll check with the owner, cross check
Mhm.
all the deposits through. She literally almost destroyed this property manager with calling her incompetent and calling her all
Oh.
sorts of things. Right now, this property manager was not strong, and I said
Mm.
she absolutely keyboard warrior. Then she sent me an email, and I wrote to her. I said, give us another 48 hours, I'll come back. She literally tried to destroy me, and I said, wait, this lady is going to play into our hands. And right enough,
Mhm.
after all this is done and we proved to her that she was wrong,
Yeah.
she gave us she actually left the property. She wanted to leave the property, and guess what, she walks right into my office and I have to take the keys from her. And so I want and then we were anticipating that this particular lady is going to literally um, go ballistic on Google
Mhm.
reviews. So I told the team, I said, if she did this on Google reviews, I
Yeah.
will tear her to pieces and actually open up everything on Google reviews, because Google reviews can be good for something, but Google
Yeah.
reviews can also be very destructive. And I said, you know what, time has come for someone to lead this whole revolution and go back to these people who are keyboard warriors
Mm. Mm.
and tear them. Because
Yeah.
this is what, and I spoke to my wife. My wife said, just relax, and because my wife also in the IT, she said, and right enough, she's moved to a she's actually gone to another state. That's
Oh.
the state of that's the state of the state of people who,
Mm.
she knew that we were going to come. We were literally going to prove that she is wrong.
Yeah.
We proved her that she was wrong. She could not bear that, and so the best thing is to go to some other place, not in because another agent. If she takes a property to another agent,
Mm.
that agent will have to check with us. So she's gone to another
Ah.
state, and my property manager could have actually uh, been mentally toned. I read the whole debate. I said, you know one thing, don't worry about this. Just let's forget about it.
Mm.
Fortunately, she was a bit more experienced to take
Mhm.
all this. People today are they just they can sit behind a keyboard and hammer you, but
Yeah.
as you say, to be available across the table and to have a proper discussion
Right.
and proper and take a proper have a resolution to a problem, those days have gone. They just want to either lift you up or they destroy you. That's all. Simple as that.
Literally, yeah. Yeah.
So it's a case coming from all over, and sometimes I really feel we come from a country where there's principles and respect, and it's till you flip that switch and go back hard, you're not going to get anywhere. You're just
Yeah.
not going to get anywhere, and you will see it in Canada itself. If you're not on their terms, you're just not going to achieve any sort of success there. It's a question of, okay, if you're good at your work, okay, I've come from India, forget about it. Let me see if I can compete with you. No problem.
Yeah.
And today it's a world of just performance and all, and sometimes, and that's the reason why there's so much of mental illness all over. In fact, the government today has come up with massive budgets. Mental illness, it is massive in Australia at the moment,
Yeah.
and I don't know what's happening there, but it is massive. It's because of people's acceptance of,
Yeah. And the government's very smart. They know how to get around and get things
yeah,
done, under the blanket, even with such dire situations. So I don't know. When people talk about how wonderful their governments are, and they live such commercial lives, I really wonder how much they understand about these things. But I guess that's, well, I mean, it's been wonderful. I did say that we will, make it 30 to 40 minutes, but I've taken a lot more of your time.
no, welcome anytime, welcome anytime. If we can contribute to society, why not? I mean
Absolutely.
that's we only on this earth, we only lent to this earth for a few years, and then we never know when we'll all have to go. So
Yeah,
just do the right thing and contribute to whatever you can. And
absolutely.
yeah, but thank you for having me on
Thank you so
your
much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll definitely love to have you back, maybe on a different topic, but definitely
very
have
much. I'm
have you
ready
back.
for that. No problem. Anytime.
Well, that was Gerrard Walker for you folks. Each of us has a story worth sharing, so I look forward to hearing from you. Until the next one, stay safe and spread the love.